On this Monday night, manhunt after a mass murder. The two brothers accused of a deadly rampage in Saskatchewan. One suspect is still on the loose.
Why would you come in and kill an innocent person?
The fond memories of the victims. Chilling comparisons to the Nova Scotia massacre.
There are sort of eerie parallels.
The lessons the RCMP have learned. Up in flames, the race to extinguish raging wildfires in a Canadian national park and California. And taking the reins.
We will deliver.
Britain's next Prime Minister and her connection to Canada.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news tonight from Saskatchewan. Police say one of two brothers wanted in the stabbing deaths of 10 people has been found dead. The other brother is still at large. 31-year-old Damian Sanderson was found dead near a house being investigated on the James Smith Cree Nation. He was found in a grassy area with wounds police say are not believed to be self-inflicted. Now, the search is still on for his brother, Miles Sanderson, who may be wounded.
Miles Sanderson, Damian's brother, may have sustained injuries. This has not been confirmed. But we do want the public to know this because there is a possibility he may seek medical attention. Even if he is injured, it does not mean he is not still dangerous.
Global's Heather Yourex-West joins us from Weldon tonight, one of the communities where the attacks took place. Heather, this is quite the development.
Yeah, Farah, it will no doubt come as some comfort to the two communities that have just been through such a terrifying ordeal, but they are still grieving the losses of 10 people, 9 from the nearby community of James Smith Cree Nation, and the 10th victim from here in Weldon, Saskatchewan, a tiny hamlet of just 200 people where everyone knows everyone, and tonight everyone is grieving the loss of a beloved friend and neighbor who is believed to have been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
This is like nothing people in Weldon, Saskatchewan have ever experienced. Not here, so close to home. Police investigators combing through 13 different crime scenes, most on the James Smith Cree Nation. But neighbors here in nearby Weldon say this scene was the home of Wes Peterson, their friend, a longtime resident known by everyone in town and deeply loved.
When I found out my friend was killed, I just hit the ground.
Ruby Works knew Peterson for most of her life.
I've known him since I was a little girl. He was like an uncle to me. Why would you come in and kill an innocent person who didn't do anything? He didn't deserve this.
Neighbors describe Peterson as a kind and gentle man who liked to keep a close watch on their community.
Yeah, the sweetest old man, like just the kindest guy. And everyone will remember him, and it'll be love that comes from it and not hate. So that's kind of the one thing that you take from it.
He was our man that was down at Coffee Row. He opened our Coffee Row every morning, Monday to Saturday.
Neighbors suspect that may have been how Peterson was attacked. With Damian Sanderson now confirmed dead, his brother Miles remains the subject of a province-wide manhunt, charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and almost certainly more charges to follow.
At 1:17 p.m. today, it was confirmed by Saskatchewan RCMP Forensic Investigation Section that the deceased is Damian Sanderson. His body was located outdoors in a heavily grassed area in proximity to a house that was being examined. We can confirm he has visible injuries. These injuries are not believed to be self-inflicted.
After the eruption of violence that left 10 people dead and 18 injured, generations of families believed torn apart, some needing air ambulances to get them to hospital for urgent care.
We're shaken up in our small town. Can you imagine what James Smith feels like with all those people that are killed over there and wounded and stuff, hurt?
The James Smith Cree Nation is asking for privacy as the people there come to terms with so much trauma and loss. Both communities now facing impossible grief, with so many questions surrounding those believed responsible. A neighbor now the subject of a province-wide manhunt. People here now locking their doors, their sense of security forever changed.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified to go to sleep. I'm terrified they're going to come back and kill again.
So communities in central Saskatchewan are rightly still on edge. A manhunt continues for Miles Sanderson, and police, while police say that he may have injuries, people are not to take this lightly, that even with injuries, he is still believed to be very dangerous. They're just letting the public know that he may seek medical attention. There's a number of police from all over the prairies that have come to the region to help with this investigation, combing through the 13 crime scenes, trying to find the answers for these two communities that are still reeling, coming to grips with such incredible losses. And of course, even after the manhunt ends and the investigation continues, the long road towards healing will continue with so many funerals in the days ahead. Farah.
Okay, Heather Yourex-West, thank you so much for your coverage. Heather's in Weldon, Saskatchewan. And police in Saskatchewan have issued another province-wide dangerous person alert, unrelated to what we just reported. This one was a shots-fired call at a First Nations community in northern Saskatchewan. Again, police say this incident is not connected to the deadly stabbing rampage. This alert was issued by Spiritwood RCMP detachment. Police say the initial call came from the Wichikin Lake First Nation. Several armed suspects are still at large and may be traveling in a dark red 2000 Ford Mustang. Police telling people to shelter in place and to call 911 if they see anything suspicious. A lot goes into executing an intense search. Mass cooperation is critical. Today, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe gave an update on what the province is doing to help.
We have supplemented RCMP and local police resources with additional provincial protective services staff from the province and coordinated increased security presence at area hospitals where many victims' families are gathering. And we continue to offer the full support and resources of the province in this investigation.
We want to bring in our Ottawa Bureau Chief, Mercedes Stephenson. Now, she's been digging into the coordination of resources. Mercedes, first, how does law enforcement make sure that all the bases are covered here?
So far, I've been speaking to individuals who are working both on this case and who have worked on previous very high-profile manhunts in Canada to find out how they put this together. And there's really two aspects, technology and eyes out. And those eyes, of course, are human eyes of both police officers and those in the community. Let's start with technology. They'll be looking for Miles Sanderson's cell phone. Is it giving off a signature? Is it on? Is it bouncing off of cell towers? They will look for access to his social media accounts, who he might have been connected to on there, anything he's posted in the past that might indicate where he has contacts or where he could travel to. There's also things like aerial surveillance. We heard the RCMP talking about aircraft. They can use drones. At night, they have night vision goggles and infrared that can pick up heat signatures, but those things tend to be more useful when you're talking about a rural search. What we're talking about right now, based on what the police are telling us, is an urban search. That's more complicated when it comes to some of this technology, and that's where the human aspect really comes in. Finding people who know Miles Sanderson, who might be sheltering him, looking for cars or people who might be known to him in a neighborhood entering a house, any signs of suspicious activity. And that's why police are encouraging people, if you see something that you think looks a little bit off, call it in. A number of folks I talked to who worked on past manhunts say those little tiny things in the past seem to come back later and often could have been a moment that makes or breaks a manhunt.
Mercedes, what about planning? I mean, how much will officers be looking into whether the suspects coordinated things ahead of time?
Well, this is a big question. What's the motive? And we don't have an answer there because that might speak to how well planned this was. And that could tell us, for example, does Miles Sanderson have changes of clothes on him, changes of vehicles? Did he have things set up? The fact that his brother is dead, Damien Sanderson, could change the police calculus. One person is harder to find than two, but he also has less help. I spoke to retired Sergeant Major Sebastien Lavoie of the RCMP about what police will be doing to try to close the loop around this individual.
How do we tighten up the net around them so that everything becomes difficult? Getting food becomes difficult. Going to a location becomes difficult. Speaking to friends becomes difficult.
And Farah, that is exactly what police will be trying to do tonight.
All right, thanks, Mercedes. As we learn more about the deadly violence in Saskatchewan, it became more and more apparent that police had learned some lessons in communicating with the public from other Canadian tragedies. As Ross Lord reports, police in Saskatchewan were quick to issue, expand, and update a string of public safety alerts, a striking contrast from what happened in Nova Scotia in April of 2020, where police communication about the Portapique massacre has been the subject of intense scrutiny and criticism.
Multiple murders, more than one crime scene, and an urgent manhunt. Something too many Canadians, sadly, have seen before, and it's especially familiar for Nova Scotians.
There are sort of eerie parallels in some ways to the Portapique tragedy that we experienced here.
This professor emeritus at Nova Scotia's Dalhousie University says he's struck by what's different, the response of Saskatchewan RCMP.
Much more what we were hoping for in Nova Scotia in terms of a major alert system, the blockading of various places, the cooperation between the local police and the RCMP, as well as the governments.
After receiving a call about a stabbing at 5:40 a.m. local time, Saskatchewan RCMP issued a dangerous persons alert to the James Smith Cree Nation at nearby communities at 7:12 a.m., followed by an updated alert at 7:57 that included pictures of the suspects. Another one at 8:20 to the entire province of Saskatchewan, and then a fourth alert province-wide at 9:45 a.m. indicating there were multiple victims in multiple locations. There was also a promise to use TV, radio, and cell phones if necessary to broadcast further alerts. By contrast, Nova Scotia RCMP underreported the Portapique massacre, limiting communications in the early hours to a tweet about an unspecified firearms complaint. They never did issue an emergency alert, something several Mounties at the Mass Casualty Commission's public inquiry admit they never considered.
I'm betting that it's just a case of none of us thought of it because none of us had seen it used in anything but a weather capacity.
Nova Scotia Mounties did encounter additional obstacles, evidence suggesting the gunman might have died early on, and then the fact he was disguised as an officer driving a full replica of an RCMP car. By the time the killer was found, driving a victim's car and gunned down, he'd killed 22 people, including a pregnant woman and an RCMP constable. Chilling proof such manhunts can become even more dangerous before they're over. Ross Lord, Global News.
A swelling wildfire at a national park in Alberta. Coming up, the warning to residents there and visitors. Overnight, the Chetamon wildfire grew again to cover some 8,000 hectares at Jasper National Park. The fire, which started on Thursday, is being described as aggressive and even unsafe for ground crews. But rain and cooler temperatures have started to help the situation. The fire is not threatening any communities, homes, or businesses at the moment, but it has consumed a number of power poles, briefly cutting off electricity to the municipality of Jasper Sunday night. While no evacuation orders or alerts are in place, residents and visitors in Jasper are being told to prepare for more possible power outages. In Northern California, at least 2 people are dead. More than 1,000 others have been forced from their homes due to the out-of-control mill wildfire. At least 100 structures have been destroyed, but crews say they are getting the upper hand on the fire and they don't expect any further spread. California, like much of the western United States, has been experiencing a severe and prolonged drought, making for extreme fire danger. To Washington State now, where the U.S. Coast Guard says it's suspending its search for 9 missing people, including a child who were on a small float plane that crashed in the Puget Sound. The aircraft went down Sunday afternoon. 1 person has been found dead. The plane was flying from the San Juan Islands near the border with British Columbia when witnesses say they saw it nosedive into the waters northwest of Seattle. The cause of the crash is now under investigation. And a search and rescue operation is underway to find survivors of a powerful earthquake in China's Sichuan province. At least 46 people are confirmed dead in the region that has millions living under a COVID-19 lockdown. The 6.8 magnitude quake shook buildings and triggered landslides, sending boulders rolling down from mountains onto roadways. Over 1,000 soldiers are being deployed to the disaster-stricken area to help with the rescue efforts. Meet Britain's Prime Minister ahead. Can Liz Truss shake off the baggage of her old boss? Weeks after the FBI raided Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago mansion, seizing many highly classified documents in his possession, a Trump-appointed federal judge has granted his request for a special master to review the materials. The move will delay the Department of Justice's probe of the former U.S. president on possible obstruction of justice and violations of the Espionage Act, with the judge also blocking the DOJ's review of sensitive files until the watchdog's examination is finished. Both Trump's legal team and the DOJ must now jointly submit a list of candidates by Friday and outline their duties and restrictions. Federal prosecutors are expected to appeal the decision. Tomorrow, newly minted UK Conservative leader Liz Truss will become the country's new Prime Minister, replacing Boris Johnson. This is the third change of leader for the ruling Conservatives in just 6 years. Truss has served in a number of top jobs in the British cabinet and even spent a year of her childhood here in Canada. But as Redmond Shannon reports, she's facing a long list of political problems and potential crises.
81,000. In a nation no stranger to political drama, this outcome came as little shock.
That Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party.
But the margin of Liz Truss's win over former British Finance Minister Rishi Sunak was tighter than some had predicted. 57% of Conservative Party members to 43.
I know that we will deliver, we will deliver, we will deliver.
Compared with Boris Johnson, Truss can seem short on bombast and charisma. Perhaps both a blessing and a curse following the non-stop controversy of Boris's reign.
My first priority is reducing taxes.
The outgoing Foreign Secretary wooed the membership with some typically Tory promises. But these are anything but typical times. War in Ukraine, high inflation, energy bills surging, industrial strikes and the still unresolved headache of Brexit. Truss originally opposed the UK leaving the EU, but like predecessor Theresa May, she flipped after the 2016 referendum. A young Truss spent grade 7 in Burnaby, British Columbia, calling it a year that changed her outlook on life. Former classmate and current teacher at the same school, Brenda Montagano, recalls how Truss fit right in.
Totally remember her as Elizabeth, but no, I have not been tracking her. So it was pretty exciting and have certainly been Googling her since, and very exciting to see the news today.
Years before becoming a Conservative, a young Truss addressed the party convention of the centrist Liberal Democrats, arguing to abolish the monarchy.
We do not believe that people should be born to rule.
Truss has since changed her position on the monarchy too. It's just as well. On Tuesday morning, she and Johnson fly to Scotland to meet the Queen for Truss's swearing in as leader. It's then back here to London, where we expect to hear more about the vision and the policies of the UK's latest Prime Minister. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Inflation and the war in Ukraine are also on the minds of EU leaders as financial markets opened, with the euro hitting a 20-year low. The fall in value is directly related to the rise in gas prices following Russia's decision to stop the flow of natural gas through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. Financial analysts say they expect the euro to drop even more. The crisis is having a ripple effect outside of Europe too, with markets in Australia, China and the UK also taking a hit. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant at the center of tensions between Russia and Ukraine has been taken offline once again. According to the plant's operator, shelling knocked out power to the last working reactor on the site. This follows days of shelling over the weekend that brought parts of the plant on and offline. Last week, inspectors from the UN Nuclear Agency were given access to the plant, and 2 inspectors are still on site. Next, we go back to Saskatchewan and more from the grief-stricken communities. Next.
Sadly, over these past years, tragedies like these have become all too commonplace. Saskatchewanians and Canadians will do what we always do in times of difficulty and anguish. We'll be there for each other.
There is so much healing to do for people in Saskatchewan after yesterday's devastating attacks. Let's go back to our Heather Yourex-West, who's in one of the communities affected by the tragedy. Heather, you know, we know that one of the suspects is still at large. I know you're in this very tight-knit community. What's it like to be there? I'm sure people are still on edge.
Yeah, people are on edge, but you know, even once this manhunt winds down and we know that one suspect is still at large, the people here are really having to come to terms with such traumatic loss. One person gone from this community of Weldon, Saskatchewan, but in the nearby James Smith Cree Nation, 9 lives have been lost. I've spent, yesterday, last night, and today talking with people in both communities, and people are just devastated. There are families in the James Smith Cree Nation that have lost multiple family members, and then they still have yet more members that are in hospital, some of them fighting for their lives. But Farah, as well, talking to so many of these people, I really get the sense that people care deeply for one another. These are large, extended families. Everyone knows everyone. These are dear friends or relatives, aunties, uncles, brothers, sisters. And so people are really honoring each other's privacy and each other's grief, even as they grapple with some really painful losses of their own. Farah?
Mm-hmm. Lives have been lost, Heather, and lives have been shattered just in the past 2 days. Thank you so much. That's Heather Yourex-West in Weldon, Saskatchewan. And that is Global National for this Monday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and we are going to leave you tonight at the Saskatchewan Legislative Building in Regina, where, as you can see, the flags have been lowered at half-mast in the wake of this senseless tragedy that's left 10 people dead and more than a dozen people hurt. Thank you for watching. Our Donna Friesen is going to be broadcasting from Saskatchewan tomorrow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.